I can hit, I can hit, I can hit. All of these are really, really terrible things to do to your friends, which is why we have plastic party axes. If I do this business, doesn't work. She's going to gank me.
We're here with Russ Mitchell. How did you find out about Hellish Quart?
So I was watching various trailers for this video game upcoming and thinking, wow, that's really cool. I wish I had time to play games because I'm an entrepreneur right now and my wife accuses me of being a workaholic. But the problem with being an entrepreneur is that if you don't do something, it doesn't get done, period. So I was seeing the trailers, had friends who were starting to play the releases and thinking, wow, this is really, really cool. And then one day a guy comes out of nowhere going, hey, you going to play the Foco option? And I was like, that's funny, right? And then I found out the guys who did it actually did put in a Foco option. And, you know, things went from there.
Nice. So what do you think of the Foco stuff? Was it good? Was it accurate?
Okay, so I'm going to quibble. There are times when it's not accurate because if you're going to have a game, you can't be 100% accurate. There are things you just can't do. Especially with a fencing game or a fighting game, you have to look at what behavior are they looking for. In Hellish Quart, they're looking for point and edge, right? Because that's what it's basically built around. Yeah. So the brawling and bludgeoning, and it's a mace and a knife and a dagger and a polearm. It's this one piece, does everything you need it to tool, isn't represented in the game hardly at all. However, they got other things dead on the money, like the reach, the relative speed, because if you hold a Foco correctly, it's not a slow weapon in the hand at all. You can hook with it, you can trap with it, you can play a brilliant high-low game with it and threaten somebody in the head and take the back of their knee. It was absolutely great and a hell of a lot of fun. And it's nice that you can use that long guard to block and shut down a lot of the incoming attacks directly, so you can play the distance game because you have nowhere near as much defense once they're inside your range as somebody who's got a cross guard does. So I really like it.
Oh, that's awesome. Is he like your main character?
So I mostly play him and Laszlo. Now, full disclosure, I'm teaching 5 fencing classes a week, and one of the things I really love about Hellish Quart is that it forces you to go into your distance management. It's the closest to an actual fencing bout I've ever seen in a video game. So the full disclosure part is that sometimes after 5 fencing classes a week, I'm just too exhausted to play Hellish Quart. It's the exact same mental task, which is an incredible compliment to the dudes who created the game. You're using the exact same mindset you would in a live bout to play a video game. And there are days when I'm simply too torn up mentally from teaching to play the game. So I tend to play Yendrik and I tend to play Laszlo because they're close to what I know, and both of them have very nice, clean, simple types of play to them. Both need to play a very aggressive game, but at the same time, a very, very clean distance management game, or else they get crushed. So that works for me. I'm a filthy casual.
Right.
And actually, I'm a super geek about it because I haven't even played the campaign part yet. What I will usually do is select the wooden weapons and go into practice mode, and then just go at it for a half an hour or so until I've run out of time that I can use to play, and then I go on to the next thing.
So you said the wooden weapons. Have you tried the HEMA mode?
I have seen the HEMA mode, but when I came up training this stuff, honestly, we didn't have all that stuff. You got to remember, I'm a HEMA dinosaur. I've been doing this stuff since the late 90s. When I started with Chaba, no one had a fencing mask. We had leftover World War I helmets and karate pads that we put on the back of our hands. So honestly, I have wooden swords still, and I still use them, and I still like them. And while the HEMA community at large would belly laugh at them, I'm old school enough that I sort of find them charming, and I'm more interested in the wooden training tools for my gaming time than I am the big jackets and the fencing masks and stuff. Although it is fun to see a plastic party axe in a video game.
Yeah, true.
I love my plastic party axes.
So you said you played Laszlo. Some people would say his guard is very weak. Is that actually a practical guard you would use in a fight?
So his guard is weak. Yes, that's because he's represented using quite a forward balanced saber. He's not guarding the way another kind of saber fencer or a rapier fencer would guard, nor should he. When you have a forward balanced weapon, you hold the weapon differently. So with Laszlo, you manage your fundamental defense with distance, and then you countercut. He's got that high position because from there, he is immediately set to stop hit or countercut or tempo hit anything you throw at him. And if need be, pop into long guard while you obtain your distance and then set up your plays. He's very much a distance management fighter. And, if you just aim for someone's forearm long enough, sooner or later, if it's a good player, you're going to realize, oh, I'm walking into a giant invitation.
Right.
Which is, how you get smacked in the face, right?
Yeah. He almost reminds me of like karate, like Kempo karate.
Very much so. And the more you've played with forward-weighted weapons, they're not slower than rear-weighted weapons at all. You're simply moving around whatever the point of rotation that weapon is and moving how that weapon tells you to move. But that doesn't mean you guard the same way. So, for example, I've got an original 1906 Hussar saber on my wall in the other room. And it's 1,300 grams. It's a hoss of a saber. It moves beautifully in the hand. But if I hold it in front of me, like I was doing Radaelian fencing or rapier fencing, the fact that that balance is a full 8 inches in front of the guard is going to slowly start wearing on the muscles that hold me in guard. And God help me if I have to come out of those guards to make an action happen, I have a big, slow preparatory movement that's going to cost me time. Now, if my hand position is a little more centered to my body or set in a way that I can immediately strike from my guard position, I don't have that problem anymore. And I can set my body weight to work throwing the blow for me, and all of a sudden the weight of the weapon disappears. And Laszlo is a beautifully PK solver, wireframe, whatever the term currently is for animation, he is a beautifully set up example of that principle in motion. His hoss of a saber is going to move.
Right. So you mentioned before that Yendrik's weapon, utilizing the full weapon would be more realistic than just a point.
It would be much more realistic and make the game unplayable.
Because he would be overpowered, right?
Well, give the game developers some credit. If you did that for Yendrik, what would you then do? You would then have to go to every one of the other characters and set loose all the cool shit they can do. And by the time you were done, you would wind up with something that was unplayable because it was Warhammer 40,000-esque. Every character would have a gazillion special moves, a bazillion special rules, and you would have an incredible learning curve to play any one of them well. Instead, you have relatively simplified, streamlined rules, and when you play one of them for a little bit and get an idea of what they're good at, you sort of have a sense of, okay, I can do these things, I can not do those things. If you have to add that physics engine to applying bludgeoning stuff, okay, which pommel strike would have ended a fight versus which one is just buying distance and letting him roll with the punch and get the heck out of the way so I can buy the space I need to actually block. It would become unplayable. And that's why I was talking earlier about games have to choose what they want to be realistic about and what they don't want to be realistic about. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And a real-life fencing tournament's exactly the same way with its rules. You have a tournament, it's going to have rules, and everyone is going to have a meta running according to those rules. I'll play like this or I'll play like that. The tournaments I run, for example, are old school Da Terreno tourneys. You have one pass with your opponent. If you get hit, you're done. You've lost that encounter. Trust and believe people fence my tournament very differently than they fence most tournaments because the meta's different. And if I changed that up, everybody else would change their playstyle too. So it is not a knock at Hellish Quart at all to say the weapons capacities aren't fully represented. None of the weapons capacities are fully represented, nor can they be, nor should they be, because then the game would suck.
Yeah, fair enough. There's always been a debate in the Discord about how balanced the game should be, compared to how fun it should be, or how realistic.
Yeah, and okay, so you've got a campaign going on, right? Realistic is Yendrik shows up full of fire and fury because bad shit's happening and he tries to get a duel or get in somebody's face, and he walks into the middle of a square and gets gunned down by a half dozen people with muskets he didn't know was there. So at some point you have to accept the fact that you're playing a game, not a historical drama simulator. And if something was going on with a Foco that was super unrealistic, yeah, that might be one thing. If you're throwing that Foco really, really easily from 20 yards away, okay, there are people who did that. Swineherds did that on the regular. But that's not something you want to see in a game. It would change the dynamics terribly.
Right.
And trust and believe, I've been using an axe for a long, long time, and I don't trust my axe skills enough to try to whack an irascible, pissed off pig behind the ear from 20 paces.
Right.
That's a guy who's been out watching animals being really, really bored for years on end.
One of the things that appear to be unrealistic to me is if you take a swing at your opponent's sword and you hit the weak part of their blade, naturally, shouldn't their sword fall down?
So it depends. If you swing really hard and you hit the weak of my blade, it is going to divert my blade. Now, if you swing really hard and you hit the middle of my blade, it's going to divert my blade a little bit less. You hit my strong, much less or not at all. But here's the rub. What angle did you hit on? If you swing really hard and you catch me edge on edge and my blade is in motion, we may just bind and not really go anywhere. If I'm not in motion and you catch my flat, my blade's going to go whoop, way out of the line. And I can use that energy to perform a moulinet and come back, either to strike or to come back in guard. In fact, my favorite trick for bullying longsworders in real life is to sit in high second, which won't mean anything to you, but with my point somewhat in line and make them deal with that. And they'll habitually knock my blade out of the way. Well, that gives me energy. So what do? I put my blade back in the way. Because the last thing I want to do is let them get close enough that when they attack, they can get a middle-on-middle bind. If I give a longsworder a middle-on-middle bind, I'm dog meat. Because that's what most of the surviving longsword sources are designed to do. They want the worst of all possible binds, and they teach you how to win from that position, when most people who don't have the training don't know how to win from the worst of all possible binds. So, it entirely depends on, here's your list of variables. Sorry, I know you guys wanted a really simple answer. It's not simple.
Yeah, so it's all about the angle.
It's all about the angle and the momentum.
I do have to give them credit though, because the way you attack from different angles will change how the move lands. What do you think?
I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I'm absolutely in love with it. I have spent more time getting my ass absolutely kicked as Laszlo, playing with what's the range at which I can play a traverse to try to snipe Barabbas's hand without getting gutted through the chest in the process. Simply trying to get good at manipulating those angles. Side note, I suck at it. I get my butt kicked. I still have not beaten mobile Barabbas in Go to 30 wooden weapons. One of these days I will manage it.
Thanks for watching this exclusive Quest TV interview. If you'd like to see more of Russ Mitchell's content, check the description below. He has a book as well as a YouTube channel.